I realized that sometimes God just gives us harder assignments than he gives other people, and we can't compare to the people who seem to have it better. All we can do is just say, yes, Lord, I'm willing, and I will trust you, even though I may not understand it.
And I want to open with that kind of story because I got home from work when our boys were probably like 6 and 4, and Jean literally met me at the door and kind of pushed the boys right into me. I mean, I had one foot in the door, and she said, I am kind of tired of some of the shenanigans that have gone on today. You need to take over. And Jean's an awesome mom, but she kind of ended up in the short end of that rope for that day. And
Even
I said,
awesome moms.
Can I just change? Can I just change my clothes? And she's like, yeah, do what you need to do, but engage these guys because I'm through today. But it was so fun. And she, she's a great mom. And that's what we want to talk about today is for the moms that feel like you're at the end of your rope on days, especially with the little ones, because there's so much activity, so much kinetic activity going on, chasing them down, changing diapers, whatever can be done with the other things on your list, it feels overwhelming. But we want to give you hope today that you can do this.
Yeah, it's a privilege and a wonderful role and a demanding role. And we have 3 moms in the studios with us. We're excited to have Kristen Rusch, Ashley Durand, and Dr. Jenny Coffey.
Well, let me say welcome to all of you. It's great to have you two for the first time. And Jenny, good to have you back.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah. So was that a fair description of, crazy?
Yeah.
Is that how, what does it sound like to you to be the mother of young children?
Well, it's interesting now because some of mine are getting older, which is weird. Like
14 to 9, if I
Right.
know
My
it correctly,
oldest is 14 and then my youngest is 9. So it's more of like, I remember when people told me when they were younger, like the young years are the physically exhausting years and the older years are the emotionally exhausting years.
I think that's right.
And that has proven to be so true because especially with my job, it's like I come home and I'm like my sensory is out. Like my hearing is like, oh my word, I've been listening all day.
So you can relate to Jean.
Yeah.
That little story.
And then
there.
they want to tell me stuff, of course, and I'm like, yes, okay.
Yeah.
Like gotta find it.
Moms are wonderful. Moms are always there. So what's your animal noise for the busy time of the season? What's it sound like, Ashley?
Yeah.
So I'm in the range,
Yes.
right?
Yes, you got it spot on. I was laughing because that's a very relatable story. I feel like as a mom with young children, there are days when I wake up and I have the best plans for the day of all the activities that the kids are going to do and love and the chores that are going to happen and the homemade meal that is going to be the best and everyone's going to love it. And then as the day unfolds, somebody colors markers on the hard floors. The neighbors pop by, the toilet overflows. Yeah. I didn't get a chance to brush my teeth,
And it's 3 p.m.
It's 3
Tragic.
p.m.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, there was one day like that where I was completely overwhelmed by how the day had unfolded. And I had managed to make dinner, and it was on the table, and everyone was just picking at their food, and nobody was eating it. And I just burst into tears. And I said, don't you know how hard it was for me to get this meal on the table?
Right.
I put my heart into it, and you guys don't even care.
We're hitting all the high notes here. All the moms are going, yep, check.
And then she just starts spoon feeding.
Exactly.
Like, you're going to eat.
All right, Kristen, I need yours. I'm not going to let you skate here.
Man, I am not good at sound effects. What am I going to do? Okay.
Oh, that's good. You could be the calm mom. Honey, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you kind of in that category?
I would like to be that mom.
There you go.
Let me ask you, though. I mean, you kind of opened this can because it is expectations. Like, you have it all laid out, especially if you're a list maker and, kind of organized in your thinking. And this is how 9 o'clock's going to roll and 10 o'clock and noon's going to be just like this. It doesn't work that way, does it?
No. And I didn't realize how controlling I was until I had kids. And they totally threw the rule book out the window.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, okay, this is how it's going to be. I'm going to have to learn how to be flexible and roll with it and be okay with that.
Let me start in that spot because I think when you look at what is God teaching us as we are the adults in the room, so often reflects what we're trying to teach our kids, right? But that idea of control, control's an illusion.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Yes, absolutely. And motherhood has been such a journey of learning to surrender, not only my kids to the Lord and entrust them to the Lord, but also surrender myself to the Lord and say, wow, I'm so inadequate for this job.
Well, thanks for listening to Focus on the Family. I think we just nailed it right there.
Yeah.
Jenny, as a counselor, I do want to have you pitch into that a little bit because that is true. I mean, when your kids are young, and that's the theme of our discussion today, control is natural. We want to control their environment. I mean, oh my goodness, did you guys buy all the stuff? The protector around the fireplace, all the electrical,
Yes.
the cabinet. Can't open the cabinet door without pushing it down. I mean, we had a weekend where Jean said, okay, they're getting into
it's
stuff.
time.
It's
Yep.
time. And that's the safetyization of your home. So, and that's good control because you want to keep your young children safe.
Right.
But if you maintain that into later years, even, later like 7, 8, 9, it starts to become a problem.
Right. And I would say, to your point of control's an illusion, I would say ultimate control is an illusion. Control in the sense of have
That's
some
true.
autonomy over self, right? To say like, oh, if there's only a few things I can get done today, these are the things I'm going to try to get done, like the meal.
Yeah.
Okay, the meal happened. That's a sense of control because she could have picked a couple other things.
Yeah.
So yes, as they get older, I mean, even one of the things that we know is from about 0 to 8 or 9, depending on maturity, children are completely others motivated.
Right.
Like they need that reminder of others motivated. Around 8, 9, depending on maturity, to about 16, we hope that they are a mix of self and others motivated.
Yeah.
So
that's the normal growth
yeah,
pattern.
maybe you forgot your lunch and I let you forget it today. Like those types of things. And then hopefully by 16, they're completely self-motivated. And so
Yeah.
that, to your point of the control, it's like, yeah, if we're still doing some of that stuff at 10, 11, 12, we're actually keeping them back when they're older.
Yeah, Ashley, you get all the good questions here because I'm thinking of the time Jean and I before we had kids and we're at like Sam's Club or something, and we see this kid melt down and mom's struggling to get control, and of course those without children go, when we have kids, that will never happen. Until I got a phone call from Jean getting out of a Walmart line, and she said, "Oh, Trent went crazy over a candy bar. I kept saying no, and he had this meltdown, and this army guy in his uniform came over and said, 'Son, you need to listen to your mother.'" And it freaked Trent out. He was probably like 3, but he already made the connection. This dude in a uniform has authority, right? But I don't know who that was, but thank you, because I was traveling. I wasn't there to help, but this guy got Trent's attention. What was your meltdown experience?
Yes.
And was it you or your children?
Well, one leads to the other.
Yeah. Isn't that true?
So, before I had kids, I also was very much like, I had this idea that I was never going to be disciplining my kids in anger. I wasn't going to be a yelling mom. I was just always going to be so graceful and patient. And then, and then I had a child that was exactly like me, and that triggered me in ways I didn't know were possible. But one day we were at the library. My son was about 3 at the time, and I'd given him a 5-minute warning. We're going to be leaving in 5 minutes, so finish up your coloring. Well, 5 minutes went by, and he was not ready to leave. He threw a huge meltdown, threw himself on the floor, screaming. Everyone, I felt the library, the library's quiet. Everyone's
I'm just seeing this librarian giving you the eyeball.
Everyone's staring at me. And I had a new baby at the time. I was holding a bag of books. So I'm holding the baby, the books, and I'm trying to pick up this toddler off the floor. He screamed, "Don't touch me!" My inner pressure is building, and I start sweating a little bit. Like everyone's watching me. I felt like they all were thinking, "What a terrible mom. She can't control her kids." And finally, it was like an Olympic sport. I got the baby, the toddler, the bag of books out to the car, and he's screaming the whole entire way. And when we get to the car, suddenly Mount Vesuvius erupts, and I just started screaming back at him. And I instantly felt this shame of, this is not the kind of mom I wanted to be. Yeah. And as I reflected on it later, why was I so angry?
Yeah.
It wasn't because he wasn't wanting to leave the library. It was because I was putting too much of my identity in what the random library patrons thought of me and feeling like a failure rather than what did my son actually need. And in response, I threw an adult-sized tantrum.
Yeah.
And that wasn't going to bring about the gospel change in him or in me just going to make me feel more like a failure?
When you're touching on something that's important for all of us as parents, whether you're a mom or a dad, this idea that we derive our sense of worth out of how our children behave.
Right.
Especially as Christians. I
Yeah.
think we in the Christian community put a lot of value on that. And we love to hear, your children are so well behaved. What have you done? Well, I pray 4 hours a day. And God honors that and has given me wonderful children. But Jenny, talk about that idea of, and you might have some very compliant children. And that's a great thing. God bless you. Most of us didn't get all of that. And so the reality is, children push those buttons for reasons. But clinically, again, I mean, the idea that we're trying to see too much of us in our children's behavior.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's probably one of the hardest parts of parenting is to what Ashley was saying is you see something in them that is a reflection of something that you don't love about yourself. And you were hoping that they wouldn't have to do it.
So how do you let the air out of that? How do you, somebody that has 3 and 4-year-olds and she's struggling in that spot right now because she just had the meltdown in the library. Thank you very much. What is the prep for her to say, okay, next time you're in that situation, here's some things to think about?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think to remember too, I like to remind people that more often than not, if you have a child that's pretty compliant at school, I mean, the public thing is hard, especially when they're toddlers, but at school, in church, at other places, and they tend to melt down at home. What that actually means is that they feel super safe at home and they feel emotionally safe to be able to do that because nobody can keep it all together all the time.
Right.
And so that's actually a lot of moms or dads will get into this place where they're like, they're so nice for Mrs. So-and-so. Why are they terrible to us? And I'm like, this actually shows that they feel like you're emotionally safe enough to completely lose it.
Right.
And then it is our job to help them self-regulate. But in those moments, what I tried to remember, especially, it's hard to not reactively parent. I mean, that's typically what happens in those moments, more often than not. And so I have tried to remember, like you said, so and Jane Doe library patron, it doesn't necessarily matter.
Right.
And
you probably never see her again.
No, right. And so you kind of sit in that place and you say, I have to care in this moment more about what my kid needs than what this 60-year-old woman thinks or this 50-year-old man. I have to care more about what my kid needs in the moment because they do at that age absolutely need you to help them co-regulate. They cannot do it on their own.
And it's always good to try to be the adult. I mean, just be telling yourself the whole time because it's so easy to tip into the emotionalism of going toe to toe. I'm a lot bigger than you. I can take you. I mean, you're going, what? What am I thinking? Kristen, I'm not going to let you out of this. You're just you're just the perfect mom. There's a story in the book where you had something unusual, an ungrateful child.
Yes.
Never.
I say that tongue in cheek. But what was your situation that expressed itself to you?
Yes. So talk about a mirror moment so my son had outgrown his previous scooter and I was able to find another scooter that was, in my opinion, excellent.
You are a great mom. That's what you're hearing in your head. Sure. I am such a good mom. Look what I did.
Look at what I got for him. He's going to love this. He's going to be over the moon. I cannot wait to give him the scooter. I show him the scooter and he yells at me. He's like, it's not as fast as my other scooter. What did you do with my other scooter? It's like, are you kidding me right now? We spent money on this new scooter. Your other one was falling apart. And you want your old scooter and you're not grateful at all that I went out of my way to find you this new scooter and I was so excited and this was going to be a beautiful family moment. And what?
Did you try? This one's much faster. Just, I don't know, that he could clock it. Does he have a radar gun or what?
I should have told him, I'm going to time you and I'm going to prove to you that this one's faster.
I would do that.
But in the moment, my jaw just dropped. I had no response. I was like, what do I even say to this? And then in my spirit, I could hear the Lord telling me, you also do this, by the way.
Oh, wow.
And it was just one of those convicting moments where I realized, no, it's so true. There are so many things that the Lord gives to me that are different than what I expected. Mm-hmm. It's better because the things that God gives us are ultimately better for us. But I'm hanging on to something that's not as good in my own faulty human, way.
It takes a bit to put the mirror on you, but it is so healthy.
Yeah.
Because then you could see the analogies, you know. I'm sure our Heavenly Father is like, what'd you do? Why'd you do it? And,
But
you know.
he's so patient with us.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where I wish, we could be like he is,
Yeah.
and it'll be a lifelong process to try to become like that. But he uses moments like that to plug in those little, oh, and by the way,
It is you.
yes.
And those are unwelcome moments, but in the end, you really do want to see the connection, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is Focus on the Family with Jim Daly, and today we've got Kristen Rusch, Ashley Durand, and Dr. Jenny Coffey with us, a mom panel talking about all the joys and challenges and moments, and we want to encourage you to get a copy of the book that Ashley and Kristen have written. It's called Mothering on Empty. Look for that at our website. The link is in the description below. And if you find this content meaningful, hit that subscribe button so we can keep growing and improving together.
Jenny, I want to direct this to you. Your husband, Blakely, is a firefighter.
Yes.
That's awesome. Tell him thank you.
Yes.
I hope he never has to come to my house.
Well, yes, right. Yes.
The reason I say all that is one of the difficulties is schedule.
Sure.
So his schedule, my brother-in-law, Jean's brother, was a firefighter. And, you're on for certain hours, then you're off, and then you have a week of a different set of hours. It's very erratic in that profession.
Right.
How did you learn to manage that solo parenting concept? The idea that I feel like I'm all alone.
I think I have it a little bit easier because this is all I've ever known. Like, we've been married 18 years this year, and he's been a firefighter since he was 19. So it was kind of thrown into it. So it's like, this is just the way it is.
Yeah.
And so a big part of it, and to your point, I do think a lot of young Gen X, millennial, Gen Z dads are more involved in the day-to-day than maybe the older generations were. And so having him help is a normal thing. But when he is gone, I think one of the hardest things for me is, to the point of what both of them were saying, is the pivoting when you have like, okay, I'm going to work today, and now all of mine are in school, so it's a little bit easier to kind of plan, all right, I'm going to do these things today, and then I'm going to pick them up. And then a kid gets sick, or there's some wrench thrown in, like yesterday, he didn't get let out at 8 like he was supposed to. He had an hour where he had to wait for his relief. And so it's like, all right, now if I was planning on him to be able to help, he can't help now.
Let me ask you specifically, because that's where a lot of tension can crop up in the marriage.
Yes.
Forget the parenting for a minute. So again, disappointment on expectations. And, when it's thoughtless, I get that.
Sure.
There may be a need to obviously voice those concerns where, he didn't get home on time because he stopped to linger and talk to friends, or, something like that. But when it's that kind of thing, where it's work-related, I couldn't get out of the office or whatever it might be, what's a better mechanism for a stressed-out mom of young kids who thought, this is when I could go take a bath? I mean, just as a thought, that would be a dream, wouldn't it? Or just getting that break so that Blakely would take the kids so I can get some things done around the house that I need to get done. What's an adult kind of attitude rather than to pounce on him?
Well, that is the instinct. I mean, there is.
Have you ever done that?
Yeah. I mean, and I tell people that in couples therapy all the time. I'm like, your brain, when it goes into fight or flight, or when you're stressed like that, it's scanning for threat. And so what's right in front of you is
the biggest threat in the moment.
Right. And so that's what it's going to see, is like your spouse or your child. And
how do you de-escalate that, though? How do you do that?
I think the biggest part of it is it's so simple. I was telling a client this yesterday. I was like, it's so simple and yet so practically difficult to actually do. But the biggest part of it is the pause. And so what I tell people is to remind them, because I hear often people talk about the somatic or the physical. They're like, but I was so triggered. I'm like, right. Once you have to just let your body go. Like, once the body's been flushed with chemicals, you have to just let it process the chemicals out, because that is a natural thing the Lord put in us. But what you can do is create space between the physical reaction and the mental, like spiraling rumination or reactivity. Yeah. And so I say, like, let the physical body do what it needs to do. And at the same time, pause, step back, and allow, like, take a brain break and say, let me just pause for a second before I pounce on any of this, knowing that I might still be anxious.
Yeah, and that's a great first step. Just slow down, take a deep breath.
It's the only thing to do.
I actually have started doing that. It works. Are you proud of me?
I am.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it took many decades.
Yep.
But I'm better at it now. I feel better. I'm more patient.
Yes.
In the home, that kind of thing. Kristen, again, I'm not letting you out of this thing.
I don't want to be out of it.
But you have a verse in Acts 26, kicking against the goads. Now, I just want to say, a lot of people may not know what a goad is. Tell us what a goad is and what's the scripture getting at when we're kicking against the goads.
Yes, I also had to look it up.
Yeah, good.
I didn't know what a goad was. So picture oxen, and you are trying to guide this ox down a certain path. It's a pokey stick.
Okay.
So if the ox starts to veer out of the path, you poke it with the goad, and they're supposed to go back onto the path. Some animals do not like being poked with the pokey stick, and so they will kick at the pokey stick, kicking at the goads, which is actually more painful because they are putting force against the pokey stick, thus hurting themselves, rather than just going back where they are supposed to be going, the best path for them. And so I had this experience where I was honestly, I was angry with God, and I was having kind of a pouting session, and I was like, God, I don't like this. This is so uncomfortable. Why are you letting me go through this really challenging season? I don't feel like I deserve this. Are you really good? Those kinds of questions that come to your mind during prolonged seasons of struggle and challenges. And he just brought this verse to mind. He's like, why are you kicking against the goads? And so I had to look it up. What are you talking about, Lord? So I looked it up. I was like, oh, I'm making this harder on myself. God is ultimately doing good for me. He's ultimately doing good for our family. But I'm seeing it through the lens of, this is hard. This is uncomfortable. I don't like this. I don't want to go in this direction. Yeah. So I am fighting it. I'm pouting about it. I'm having a bad attitude. And God is saying, if you'll just shift your attitude, this will be so much more pleasant for you, so much more pleasant for your family. And it was just kind of a aha moment for me.
Boy, much of life seems to point in that direction, right? If you just adjust your attitude, daughter, son. I mean, the Lord, he must have that speech with different people thousands of times a day in different circumstances, because this is just the human condition, right? The sinfulness of humanity. Ashley, I want to read a quote from the book because I thought this was good, Mothering on Empty. In the book you wrote, I realized that if my identity was based solely on my role as a mother, then I would come up short every time. My kids would never be perfect, and neither would I. That's a good billboard. Guess what, everybody? You're never going to be perfect, and your kids will never be perfect either. They might be great kids, but if they're perfect, they'd be Jesus.
Right.
So how did that minister to your heart to say, how do you embrace that and believe it?
Yeah, well, that's the challenge that I've wrestled through. But I feel like when you put your identity in people, no matter how good they are, and no matter how well behaved they are or how kind they are to you, at some point they will let you down. And at some point you'll be feeling like you're at rock bottom because you aren't feeling loved, basically. And so when I realized that and realized that I needed to have my identity in Christ first, that really changed everything. And nothing has helped me form my identity more than spending time reading the Bible. As simple as that sounds, and if you're a Christian, you've heard that so many times, but it really is true that as a mom, you feel like you don't have time because you're so tired and you're always caring for other people. So you feel like you should put it off until later. But the more that you don't feed your soul, the more empty that you are.
One of the statistics that shocked me was the amount of depression in moms of newborns and infants. It's like anywhere from 50 to 80%. That is shocking to me. I didn't realize it was that steep. Jenny, what's happening?
I think it's probably lack of community. I mean, I was even talking to my husband last night about just how different stages, and it really doesn't, I don't know if it gets easier through parenting. I will say, like, I have more acquaintances through, like, my kids' sports. Like,
Right.
oh, I see these parents all the time. They're familiar, they're comfortable. But, like, deep friendships are just really hard no matter what stage you're in.
Yeah.
And so the number is surprising, but I think for a lot of people, they just kind of chug along and assume that it's normal.
Ashley, I would think, especially for the new mom, your firstborn, that is a big transition socially, because you've got, you're doing probably a lot of outings with other couples that don't have kids. It's your network, and then you have a child, and socially, it's very different. It could be isolating.
Yeah,
because your friends just keep doing what they're going to do, and you really don't fit in with an infant.
Right.
Absolutely. And like I said, for me, our son was colicky, and so we felt like we couldn't go out anywhere because he was crying all the time. And it was just like we were taking turns outside the restaurant holding the crying baby while the other one was in with the other people. And so it definitely was kind of an adjustment and a bit isolating at first, until we realized that it's okay for your baby to cry in public, and a lot of other parents understand, and that your real friends will be there for you, no matter if they're going through a different stage of life or not.
It sounds like the big issue there is just relax.
Yes.
This is a phase.
Yeah, you don't have to worry
don't
so
get
much.
emotionally worked up that it'll never be better.
Right. It does get better.
And it's again, those social structures need to reconnect, and you'll find other new moms, especially again, hopefully through church.
Yes, I think joining a mom's group was a game changer for me to hear other moms say, "Oh yeah, my baby does the same thing," or I didn't sleep for a certain period of time, and to see that they survived that and that they were thriving.
Yeah, moms of preschoolers is a great organization.
It was great for me.
Describe why rest for moms is so important, and how can moms prioritize rest? Do you know my schedule?
Right. It does feel like you can't rest. It feels like you need to take care of everyone else around you.
There's always more to-dos than done.
Yes. And when you have a baby that just needs to be fed every 2 hours, or wants to only sleep when you're holding them, it can just feel like you can't take a break. But when you don't take a break and when you don't sleep, your mental health goes downhill quick, and you're not able to effectively love your family as well as you can otherwise. I remember a season where I hadn't been sleeping because my baby was awake all night, and I read the verse in Isaiah that says, "Come to me, you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest."
And every mom said, "Amen."
Yes.
I'm weary.
And I realized that not only was I physically tired, I was spiritually and emotionally tired. I hadn't been taking a rest for my soul, and spending time with the Lord, and that it was okay to ask somebody for help, to say, "I really need a rest, and I need you to come sit with my baby for an hour or 2 hours. And it's okay to go get your hair done, get your nails done, spend a time reading the Bible, or take a nap, or whatever you need."
You know what's interesting with that? It strikes me again. Jean and I did foster care, and in foster care you do training, and then they encourage respite families.
Right.
Respite. I had to say, okay, what's a respite family? For those that don't realize this, these are families that will come around a foster parent and help them by doing a chore, taking the kids for a weekend so the family can have a break. And I kept thinking, man, every family needs respite families, right? Back to your point, especially new moms. And that's where that friendship group again, or family, if you guys can structure it that way to even work it out where grandparents can take the little ones for a weekend to give you and your husband a 24-hour break, a 48-hour break, if that's doable. That's a good thing to do. A little space, a little connection time, a little rest for you. You had a difficult first pregnancy.
I did,
and
yes.
In that context, describe what you went through, and then help us understand kind of how that led into a faith struggle for you. And what was the difficulty?
Well, I had I don't know if you're familiar with hyperemesis gravidarum. It's where you're throwing up all the time.
Through the whole 9 months.
Through the whole 9 months.
So it's like the first trimester.
Yes, most people are better through after the first trimester, but I was throwing up 9 times a day or more for 9 months, I had to get fluids at the ER, and it was rough. I mean, driving in the car, I had to pull over and throw up in random yards, and
that's you.
Yeah.
No, okay. No.
That's why I moved away.
That's terrible. I'm sorry. But, I mean, that's a hard way to experience pregnancy. It's unusual.
It was very hard. I was just so sick. And then when I felt like, as soon as I have the baby, it'll be better. But then I had a really traumatic birth. There was an unplanned C-section, and the pain medication, the epidural, didn't work. And so I felt the C-section operation. I passed out. I had an allergic reaction to the medications afterwards. And
so you were ready to roll as a new mom.
It was really, really hard. And yeah, then when we left the hospital, my baby had colic, and he cried all the time. He was awake all night for
this poor guy.
Every night for the first probably year of life. And I really wrestled with God on why do some people have like the easiest pregnancies, and they have home births with no medication, and their babies are happy and smiling, and then this was my story. And I just kept saying, why, God, why? I don't see any lesson that you're supposed to be teaching me here. Because, you always look for the lesson. But I felt like God was telling me, you don't need to know why. You just need to be faithful to me and trust me. And the fact that it was such a hard pregnancy and birth has made mothering my son so powerful, and it makes it worth so much because it cost me so much to get there. Yeah. And so if anything, I can be thankful for that, and that God has he preserved my life through that birth and allowed me the opportunity to be a mother, and just to be grateful for that. And sometimes I realize that sometimes God just gives us harder assignments than he gives other people, and we can't compare to the people who seem to have it better. All we can do is just say, yes, Lord, I'm willing, and I will trust you, even though I may not understand it.
Sounds like Paul, be content in all things. Yeah. Allow me to interrupt for a moment to say how much I appreciate you watching. If you find value in this content, please subscribe by clicking below. It'll be a big help. Now, let's get back to the show. Kristen, I want to ask you this because you were a business owner before being a mom, and you had to make that decision. Jean was in biochemistry and teaching labs at a university when we got pregnant with Trent. So for so many young women today, that becomes such a struggle because they don't know the value of each. And man, do we as a culture put value on working outside the home, kind of neglecting the beauty, everything you said at the beginning, John, just how amazing motherhood is and the contribution it makes to the culture. But describe that battle that you had and your decision to stay at home.
Yeah, it was a battle. I wrestled a lot because I had all these different voices. I had my own desires of wanting to apply my passions and my giftings and the things I had learned in school. I love working for myself, being self-employed and being able to have the gratification of growing a business and seeing the fruit of your labor. Like, it's really rewarding. And so to set that aside is really difficult. But then you have this life, this eternal being that you're pouring into too, and you want to soak up every moment, and you want to be present. And then you have social voices too. Like, I just kind of felt the pressure to be mom plus. Like, you need to be a mom, but you also need to be furthering your education, or you need to be a mom and you need to be working, or you need to be a mom and you need to be doing all these extracurricular activities. Like, I just kind of felt that exterior pressure on top of my own internal pressure. So it's a lot to kind of process through and figure out, okay, what are the priorities? What is God asking of me in this season? And I didn't want to listen to the Lord, to be honest. And so I tried to juggle both. I wanted to sort of obey God, but also keep some of what I wanted. And God was like, okay, we can play this game. God is so patient. Again, he's so patient. He lets us fumble things. He lets us make bad decisions. He lets us learn from our bad decisions. And he graciously picks us back up and goes, okay, let's do this a different way.
Yeah.
So it got to the point where I couldn't put off closing down my business anymore. And so the Lord just brought me to that breaking point, and he's like, okay, I'm going to close it down for you. And so he did. And it was very hard, but it was also one of the best things for my motherhood, because I could finally close that chapter and have the headspace and the energy and the presence to be there with my kids and to invest in them.
Which is beautiful. And I understand there's going to be some moms that are, in a place they have to work.
Yeah.
Or at least, the budget, they feel the constraints, and so I'll have to do this. And I would suggest, it's good to look at doing that for a season, but again, those early years, the more frequently that you can spend time in home with those kids when they're little, the better they will be, the healthier they will be. Not to put a guilt trip on anybody, but I think that's generally the rule of thumb. It's better for you to sacrifice in that moment, and then you'll reap the rewards. Kristen, I want to follow up with you. You also had postpartum experiences, and I just, for the women that have gone through that, it's not unique, but it's cloudy. Describe it.
No, so I definitely grew up with the idea that Christians don't, like real Christians don't deal with depression.
Yeah.
I think that was just kind of prevalent in the time that I grew up in. Yeah. And so I just, being a believer in Christ and having what I considered to be a strong faith in Jesus, I was like, okay, well then I'll never deal with depression. Right. We can check that off the list. And so I remember, as part of the prep for my birth, I had to go to classes that talked about postpartum depression, and I would just kind of tune out and think about other things. And even after giving birth, the questionnaires that you fill out at checkups, I would just kind of be like, yeah, whatever. And I wouldn't even read the questions, just, circle something that won't get me any weird questions from the doctor and move on. But in reality, I was really struggling. And
what did it look like for you? Give me the adjectives that describe that.
Yeah, I felt alone. Mm-hmm. I felt just disinterested in the things that used to bring me joy and happiness. I felt totally overwhelmed. My sleep was all over the place. I was exhausted during the day and I couldn't sleep at night. I was struggling with anxiety. So I think those are
and the key is, what do you do to cope with those things when you're feeling or despondent toward the baby?
Yeah.
Like,
and it was really hard for me to connect with a newborn, like especially when they don't smile at you in those early weeks where it's just kind of like a burrito that you have to change their diaper, like, and they don't really connect with you. It's like, this is hard.
Yeah.
And so, because you long to connect with your child. And so in those early weeks where they're still, developing and they don't connect fully, it just feels very lonely.
Did you translate that into what's wrong with me? As a mom, I'm not feeling this connection. Something's wrong with me.
Yeah, there was a lot of shame that went with that.
How did that transpire then? How did you, the number of weeks or months, what did it take before you felt, okay, I've arrived?
To feeling better?
Yeah.
Well, so in my case, it lingered for about 9 months.
Yeah.
And we had just moved to a different state, and we were getting caught up on, some of the kids' doctor visits and things. So we finally got plugged into a pediatrician, and she's like, okay, well, I'm going to send you some questionnaires that you should have taken earlier, but we'll just do them now. And so I remember sitting in this new pediatrician's office, and I thought my questionnaires were done. Like, it was mostly are they crawling? Are they rolling over? Are they doing X, Y, and Z? And so I turned the page and it was questions about me. It's like, oh, okay. And for whatever reason, I decided to read the questions this time. And as I went through the list, I realized, oh, wow, I'm depressed. And it was just kind of this, it was a sinking feeling and a relief at the same time to have an answer for why I was feeling all of these things.
Yeah.
And so then I had to just come to terms with, well, I guess Christians can be depressed. And how does that work? So it was kind of a growing season for me in my faith and learning Christians do deal with depression and it's okay.
Yeah, Jenny, let me come back to you because you've seen this, I'm sure, in your practice. But the idea, first, those adjectives that help describe a woman, and you may not know. I mean, to your point, Kristen, am I postpartum? I don't know. What would that look like, and what is the help that she needs in that moment? What should she do? A new mom, let's just assume there are new moms listening, and they're where Kristen was. I'm not feeling this connection or this bond. What's wrong with me?
So first of all, I think it's helpful to differentiate baby blues and postpartum depression. So postpartum depression is like an actual diagnosis, and there's criteria for that. Baby blues, most people go through that. And when you think about it, transparently, it's like what your body just went through, your hormones getting back into swing, all of those things. It makes total sense. There's nothing wrong with you to feel a little off. It's like, well, yeah, if you had this like massive, arguably the biggest thing you'll ever do, of course you're going to feel a little off. Postpartum depression, I tell people, if you're starting to really feel very disconnected from your baby, listless, non-motivated, in a way where I'm talking non-motivated, like I haven't showered in a week, those types of things. Those are the things I really encourage people. You tell your husband, maybe tell your mom or sisters or other trusted women in your circle and get some perspective on, and be honest in that perspective. If you're going to reach out, be honest. And then really, truly, this can be a little taboo, but more often than not, if it's true postpartum depression, it needs medication.
And that's okay.
Temporary medication to reset hormones.
Right. And is that typical, a 9-month kind of run? Is it all over the map, or within a year or so that should be taken care of and you should be in a better place?
I think Kristen would probably affirm that the quicker you address it, the faster it will go, probably. And so it's not going to just typically go on its own. So that's something to tell people. And I actually like to remind people, there's a statistic that actually says if you dealt with any type of postpartum, so postpartum depression, anxiety, or OCD, because there's 3, there's not just postpartum depression. If you deal with any of those in the first 2 years, it can show up for 7 years afterwards. So it's not just this like short period of when they're a year that feels like 10, right? It actually can pop back up. And more often than not, I do tell people to be aware. If you have previous mental health diagnoses like depression, bipolar, major depression disorder, then it is more likely that you will struggle with postpartum. So just being aware of that, the transparency of that can help people.
And one of the great things, if you are not sure, call us here at Focus on the Family. You can talk to someone like Jenny, who is in the counseling department. We can arrange that call, and you can just talk to them about what you're experiencing as a new mom. And is this something that's normal, or should I get some help? They can provide some guidance in that way. Jenny, this idea of grace for oneself, it's probably one of the more difficult topics, right? It doesn't feel good to have grace for myself. I should be performing, so I feel better about myself. But the whole prospect of grace, the whole attitude of that is it's grace.
Right.
It's not something you have to earn. It's not something you have to work toward. This is God's gift to us, His grace toward us. Why do we struggle so much extending that to ourselves?
I think part of it has to do with the fact that we're afraid that if we drop the bar just a little bit, then everything else will fall. And that was something that I've kind of had to reevaluate the last few years for myself was, if you're juggling a ton of balls and every single ball is glass, then you can't let any of them drop. And the imagery I have for myself is, I bet some of these are dryer balls. Like, I bet some of them have got to be dryer balls. And it's like, that's fine, And so you pick the things that are like, these are more glass, these are more fragile. I care more about these things, or they're more priority to me. And then the other things where it's like, maybe the dishes don't get done today, or whatever it is. Like yesterday afternoon, I'd had all day of seeing clients and meetings, and I got home and I knew I had another appointment that evening. And so I conked out on the couch for like 30 minutes. And there was part of it for me where I'm not falling asleep, I'm resting.
Yeah.
But what that's really modeled, what I have found, and not that my kids are perfect, they give me so much grace back when I've gotten better at giving it to myself. And so modeling that to them, especially with them being older, like I'll wake up and be like, I'm sorry I laid down, guys. And they're like, Mom, it's okay that you rested. Like, it's okay. Like, they give
That's great.
that grace. And so I found that the more I model that, because I want them to do that for themselves when they're older, the more that I try to model that, the more they give it back to me, which is like a gift that I probably tangibly couldn't have known how great that is. And then hopefully the more that they feel the permission to give it to themselves, because if it was modeled to you, if you have parents that are just doers all the time, then you're going to have children that feel like, I'm not allowed to mess up. I'm not allowed to rest. I have to be productive. I have to be doing. And really what I try to help people to realize is like rest is productive. It's not something to put on your list, but it is a productive thing to do.
Well, but for that mom of young children, you might need to put it on the list.
Right. Yep.
Rest from 2 to 2:20.
Right.
I mean, that's not a bad idea.
But it's not something to achieve, I guess is my point.
Good.
Yes. It's not something to say like, oh, I did so good at rest today. You know.
Or more stress. You're just laying there going, I got to rest. I got to rest.
Right.
It's on my checklist.
Right. And then your brain's just going to keep you awake.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Well, ladies, this has been great. Let me say thank you for certainly for John and I to be more informed about what it feels like to be a mom of young little ones. And I certainly have walked away a little better informed. How about you, John?
Good stuff. Yeah, really.
Don't say that. Do this. But, for our role, be supportive and help your wife. I mean, that is most important. And Ashley and Kristen, thank you for your hard work in writing the book, Mothering on Empty, How Moms Like You Found God's Joy. And we didn't mention this before, but you collaborated with several other moms who contributed to the book, and there's a lot of great content in there that we couldn't cover. I mean, we covered quite a bit. But what a great tool for you to be able to digest. Get in touch with us, and if you can make a gift of any amount, we'll send you the book as our way of saying thank you for supporting the ministry, and you get a great resource.
Yeah, donate today when you call 800, the letter A in the word family, or click the links in the description below. By the way, we're also going to include a link for our Age and Stage e-newsletter. This is a great program. It's free. You just let us know the ages of your kids. We'll feed you information every week for those particular ages, and our goal is to be with you in the parenting journey until you release them and you've got adult kids. So let us help you be a more effective, better equipped parent when you sign up for the Age and Stage e-newsletter. Again, our number 800-A-FAMILY, or check the links in the description below. And thanks for watching Focus on the Family with Jim Daly. I'm John Fuller, inviting you back as we once again help you and your family thrive in Christ.